First, I'll briefly state that today's webinar is the first of what we expect to be a really excellent series of dialogues, learning, and professional activities convened by the Sustainability Curriculum Consortium. And to give you an overview, in case you're not already familiar with who we are and what we propose to do together today. The Sustainability Curriculum Consortium represents an opportunity to catalyze the next phase of the sustainability movement in higher education. A cohesive, aligned, and integrated approach to sustainability scholarship, supported by curriculum and professional development across the disciplines. And the Sustainability Curriculum Consortium is a member of the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, or HESI. So let me briefly introduce the people you'll be interacting with in this webinar: myself, Ira Feldman, Tom Bowman, and our presenter, Kim Smith. I am, as I said, the Director of Learning and Practice with the SCC. I'm a doctoral fellow at Antioch University, New England, where I'm pursuing my PhD in Environmental Studies. Ira Feldman is the SCC's founder and managing director. He holds positions at the University of Pennsylvania with Green Track Strategies and with the Climate Adaptation Scholars, and has been an active voice with U.S. and international sustainability professional development initiatives. Tom Baumann is a certified knowledge manager who's been working with Ira and me to offer Collaborase as a tool for this ongoing dialogue and our collaborative work ahead. Tom Bowman is the co-founder and director of knowledge management at the GHG Management Institute. And Dr. Kim Smith is a sociology instructor at Portland Community College, Sylvania. She's also the coordinator of the Greater Portland Sustainability Education Network, which is the regional center of excellence of Greater Portland. And she's been a key U.S.-based leader attending international sessions on education in sustainable development. So we are glad you're here. We want to acknowledge your leadership in taking this first step with us and say thank you so much. And now I will hand you over to my colleague, Ira.
Thanks for that introduction. Welcome, everyone. I want to second what Jess had to say about appreciating your joining in with us today on what is our the launch of our initial dialogue with this webinar. This webinar kicks off our pilot online dialogue relating to what sustainability educators at the college and university level need to know about relevant UN initiatives. The full dialogue includes, over the next 6 weeks, access to relevant resources identified by our expert presenters, participation in a facilitated dialogue online on the Collaborase platform that just mentioned, 3 scheduled webinars, including the next one next Tuesday, April 19th, and then a third one on Thursday, April 28th. And then in the final 10 days of the online dialogue, everyone who has opted into the process will co-create a synthesis document on this topic as a contribution to the field. The registration for the online dialogue, which again includes all 3 webinars, remains open for the full 6-week period. I'm hoping those on the line and those of you listening to the recording will feel free to forward the summary information to your colleagues who may be interested, not only in this topic, but also because we're pioneering a new approach in supporting sustainability educators with these dialogues and utilizing the Collaborase platform. As I said, the webinars will be recorded, so participants who join and are encouraged to join on a rolling basis over the next few weeks will have access to all the dialogue materials, including the recordings. Our next webinar will be led by Julia Heiss, who is a team leader at UNESCO in Paris, and our third webinar on the 28th will be led by Melissa Goodall, who is Associate Director of the Yale Office of Sustainability. All of the key documents related to the webinars and the dialogue are being posted on the public page for the dialogue series. That link should be in the confirmation email that those of you who registered will have received. And at the bottom of that confirmation email that you all received is the link for you to give to others who want to opt into the dialogue process. To repeat it here briefly, it is collaborase.com/SCC online dialogue. Again, collaborase.com/SCC online dialogue. Finally, before handing it over to our expert presenter today, Kim Smith, and she has been a leader for those of us here based in the U.S. Kim has been attending all of the key international meetings on education for sustainable development. We're privileged to hear from her today. She is leading not only a regional center of excellence at her institution, but she has also represented HESI at some of these international level meetings, and she is an HESI board member. And finally, I'm proud to say that the Sustainability Curriculum Consortium is an organizational member of HESI, and we look forward to our collaboration on additional activities, products, and services with HESI as our organization evolves. With that, I hand it over to Kim. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you very much, Ira and Jess. I'm really happy to be here. So we'll get on over to the screen. Hopefully everybody will be able to see the screen. I'm going to just turn on my webcam just for a moment to say hello, and thank again our team for being part of this, thinking about how we can, just a second, I have to do all the, show the webcams. Hello. So yes, my name is Kim Smith, and I'm connecting with you from Portland, Oregon, and I hope that for a lot of you that this will be a good overview of a lot of the UN initiatives that are happening, and how higher education in particular can serve as a leader. I am also aware that some of you are certainly experts in this, and so some of this might be review, but I want to make sure that everybody's up to speed on some of the history as well as current initiatives. So I'm going to go over to the PowerPoint and go into some of the core foundations of where we're headed, and then explore how you can get involved. And I do want to do one clarification on the RCEs. It's Regional Centers of Expertise instead of excellence. And that's important just to say that, because we're all experts in different ways. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be excellent. It just means we can actually be quite good at making mistakes as well as trying new things. And that's what a lot of this is. We're really trying to, it's in many ways, these are social experiments, and I want to encourage folks to feel bold and courageous and try new things and see what we can do to actually scale up quickly to address the crises and environmental and economic social issues of our time. So anyway, I just wanted just to clarify, that's the correct acronym on the RCEs, and I'll mention those briefly. Okay, so thinking through this, we're going to, the core goal, as you saw in the introduction or the advertisement for the program, is to think about what we as educators in higher education need to know about relevant UN initiatives, partially because we need to be up to speed on them, but also to align with them. I feel that we can be much more effective if we are working together and increasing our collective impact rather than working at cross purposes. So hopefully that will be achieved by the end of this session. Again, we'll go over some history and really emphasize the new UN initiatives and opportunities that folks have to get involved. And then we'll have about 15 minutes at the end for some time for questions and answers. And so please do, as Tom Bowen said, wrote in the chat page, keep those coming in, and then we'll have that moderated session at the end. So this is, certainly we have been talking about sustainability issues for a long time, but I'm going to really just ground this in 1992 and the first Rio Earth Summit with Agenda 21 asking us, what do we need to do for the 21st century? And a lot of people talked about Agenda 21, certainly for over 2 decades. Were we able to achieve the goals? And those Millennium Development Goals that emerged from Agenda 21 and our broader conversations with interagency conversations and member states led to a focus on the developing countries, issues of poverty, education, gender equality, and those have just recently come to an end. And where we are now is really recognizing that the Millennium Development Goals were ambitious. We did achieve actually a fair amount of advancements in addressing issues of education and gender equality. We have seen improvements in food and sanitation and water. Certainly much more to do, however, in those. And we'll explore those a little bit more when we get into the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the new ones now. When we really think about it through education, how do we achieve these goals? What are we needing to do as a global citizen, as a global community, but also within our own institutions? The focus became on education for sustainable development. And it's important to recognize that preposition. It was purposefully chosen to identify that we need to reorient education and towards sustainable development, towards a sustainable future. So the 4, again, is important to remember. We are trying to advance a sustainable world, and education has a very, very important role to play in that. When I use the word education, and generally within UN language, we're saying formal education, which includes schools and higher education, non-formal education, which generally represent nonprofits, private industry, and government agencies, and informal education, which generally comes from the media. So keep that in mind. So really, in many ways, we're all educators because we all have some connection to one of those, if not all of those sectors. So the UN decade was one of the few goals that came out of Agenda 21 to actually receive a whole decade. And it really helped us organize ourselves and be very intentional in thinking about what we need to do to reorganize education for a sustainable future. And you'll see 2014 is a really core year there. We focused on that for 10 years, but it also was intentionally overlapping with the 20-year anniversary of the first Rio Earth Summit. Rio plus 20. Many of you were certainly paying attention to that. I was, again, fortunate to represent HESI and the higher education sector for the United States, actually for North America, in 2012 in Rio. We had a very, it was kind of an intense time, I'll say. Higher education was not actually defined as a stakeholder. We had a education certainly was, but the focus was more on the K-12 systems, and so we had to advocate for ourselves. We weren't included as HESI, and a lot of our sister organizations around the world were not included as members or recognized entities within the UN. So really, since 2012, we've stepped up to become part of a sustainability initiative. And the HESI, or Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, was a document that was launched in Rio. We have a lot of elements to that, and it took a lot of work and conversations to synthesize together what our sector actually offers. So thinking about who are we and what can we achieve when we work together. So certainly we need to teach about the concepts. That's an obvious one. What kind of research are we able to offer to these pressing issues of our time? Of course, campus-based efforts, operations, and facilities are always addressed, but we're talking about moving beyond, working with our HVAC systems and changing our energy systems. If you can look at the HESI, you can look this up and you'll see the full document that folks signed on to. What can we do in our local communities and the way that our institutions engage with the folks around us? And finally, how do we tell our stories? What do we need to do to let folks know? Rather than just being within our ivory towers, within our disciplines, what is it that we can do to let not just the UN know, but the State Department, like within the United States, really didn't know what we were doing? I'm going to ask somebody to mute their microphone. We've got some typing in the background there. So anyway, I just want to point out this is the biggest picture. Coming out of 2012, we did a lot of outreach. We held a side event in Rio and then launched the HESI. And the document that emerged from the future we want, from Rio Plus 20, the future we want, is really key. What does that mean for us? And within the HESI, of all the treaties that were presented, higher education received 1/3 of all the signatures. We weren't even at the table. Here we were receiving 1/3 of all the signatures. We didn't have that much education. I'd reviewed the Future We Want draft. 8 sections were added in, and they resolved to commit to moving beyond the decade. So here we are, 2016, being asked to step up to really being recognized that the work we do is necessary to move sustainable development forward. So we thought perhaps things would end in 2014, but they haven't. So now the big question is, what type of world do we want? Not just the future we want, but the present as well. So these are the terms you're hearing, the world we want, now being the documents that are the guiding questions which turned into Agenda 2030. But for each of us, what type of world do we want? What type of country do you want? What type of state, region? For us, what type of Portland do we want? We want a greater Portland. So how are we going to help that on a regional level, help meet our regional challenges through collaboration across sectors? And so I'm going to just go over some of these new initiatives and again, think about where we fit within these 5 core goals. In the past, you've probably heard the 3 E's, plenty of talk about the 3 pillars of economy, environment, and equity. Now we have the 5 P's. And notice prosperity would have perhaps been profit in the past, but they're not just trying to show that economic system. So prosperity or well-being will sometimes be showing up in the language. So planet, people, prosperity, those are your other 3 E's that we used to have. And now let's bring in peace and partnership. We're developing relationships so we can actually, again, scale up, emphasis being on collaboration and relationship building. So ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, and I'm going to focus on higher education, but again, recognize that when you see that within the UN language, they're using the broader K-12 formal, non-formal, and informal education. So 2014, we celebrated the end of the decade for ESD, and we launched in Japan, very important, this new declaration. So you can look that up. I've been trying to provide resources to the SCC and to IRA that will be up on their website. Daiichi Nagoya Declaration stated that we will recommit to ESD, that we won't be able to achieve our goals if we don't have a solid education for sustainable development plan. UNESCO also committed to continue on the work of the decade and asked every country to develop a global action program on ESD. That will be covered in more detail by Julia Heiss in the next webinar. I will talk about it a little bit because I want to give some examples of actions that we are taking, but I do want to honor the contribution she'll be making in the next presentation. The emphasis on education and on the Millennium Development Goals, those came to an end in 2015 and were celebrated in Korea. From there, they created a declaration that also recognized the transformation from the Millennium Development Goals to the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, how can we create an educated populace that will support, increase public awareness, increase the workforce skill sets that we need to move our efforts forward, as well as having the contributions through formal education, within research, within literacy, that is also including global citizenship. So ESD as an umbrella includes the standard issues of literacy, but also global citizenship. It's important to keep that in mind. And then, of course, now with our Agenda 2030. Within just the last few months, boy, 2015 was a watershed year. Between COP21 in Paris and the Sustainable Development Goals, the Pope's encyclical, that was really a year of decisions, huge decisions to come together as a planet and organize to basically save the world. 2016 is a year of action, and for all of us making choices about what kinds of things we're going to do. I'll be quiet for just a moment so you can glance at this. Within Agenda 2030, I have a lot of the content up here because we recognize that folks will be reading this later or will be reviewing this presentation later. So if they miss out, I did want you to all have the broader context. But notice these are universal goals. These are ambitious goals. The next 17 goals we'll look at we have to have a vision for a better world. We can't just focus on the scary issues. We want to focus on the positives and the possibilities. So just give you that warning. They are ambitious. It's good to have those stretch goals. And so I'm going to explore those next. Some of you probably studied these. I encourage you to read the 17 goals and to, as we go through these 17 goals, find where your work is connected, or if they're not connected, thinking about what kind of outreach you can do to colleagues who are doing this work, okay? And the first 5 there, or 6 at the top, no, first 5, those are your Millennium Development Goals, basically, that have been folded into these. Then come the economic and infrastructure types of topics, and then the environmental ones. So lots of people are like, 17, my goodness, how in the world can we come up with that many? How are we going to achieve all of them? They're all interconnected. I mean, I don't know how you would take any of those out. So looking at each of these, when you go in, the documents have 169 indicators. So go in, check those out too. Look at the distinct, specific goals, and again, think about where your work, whether it's the content and curriculum of your courses, or the again, workforce skills that we need to develop for our students, but also for ourselves. And each of these, as we go through them, think about what you're doing in your own communities. Each of these, we've done this presentation a number of times, and we've talked to community members. Of course we're doing these efforts. We know the different nonprofits in our towns or our healthcare institutions that are working on these problems. And of course, there's more to do. Quality, sure, but also access and affordability. Lots of emphasis on affordable and clean energy for all. Certainly lots of emphasis on climate change coming out of Paris. The next one, these being in Portland, such an emphasis on green cities. But boy, goal 10, that seems pretty challenging. And you can imagine where there might be some pushback and which countries would have some significant issues with these. This is also on a lot of green city efforts going on around, and urban studies programs. So again, if this isn't your area, you might find ways, at least within the social sciences and humanities, that can connect in beyond just your STEM programs. For all of us, this is also within our procurement efforts, within our institutions. Paris, again, always thinking about what are all of our work and lifestyle efforts that will make a difference when we talk about climate change. And then within habitat, within our oceans, within our land, again, it might seem like some other discipline or some, maybe kind of far from you, but boy, if you want to have a relationship with this planet, you want to think about all the oxygen for each of your breaths, every other breath, taking that second breath and just thank plankton for creating all of your oxygen for you. Then, of course, what kind of world do we want? What kind of future do we want? I sure want one that's peaceful and kind and harmonious. And I'm hoping that that will come about through partnerships with each other. So, all right, this is the specific piece here, digging in and recognizing that we are, as this specific effort, really hidden in goal number 4 and indicator 4.7. It's big. We at ESD, sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, peace, and it's like these are huge things that we're supposed to talk about and teach and empower our students. But it's down in this one little corner of 4.7. And so when we had a meeting in January, we said, this isn't possible. You're not going to be able to achieve any of the goals without education for sustainable development. So ESD, we hosted a meeting. This was an interagency meeting. Those recommendations are available on the website that I have posted there. I have also compiled those into a document that the SCC has up on their website as well on this Collaborase page. But the Ahmedabad plan is really essential in stating that what we offer through education is going to help us be the engine of change. And higher education in particular might be a luxury for many around the world. Only 3% of the world gets to go on to higher education, but we become 80% of the leaders. Therefore, if we are going to create change and help implement the Sustainable Development Goals, we must increase competencies. We must be transformative. And I love the idea, this term of being co-creators. So I hope that folks will feel empowered and recognize the role that we all play in meeting the 17 SDGs. All right, I mentioned the gap earlier. I'm going to just bring up a few core points and then illustrate how they work. As I'm going through this, keeping check on time as well. The roadmap, if you can please, I imagine there are folks from around the world participating in this, please do check with your governments and find out if a gap has been written, what the status is. For the United States, this delegation that went to the UNESCO World Summit, we wrote up our recommendations and submitted those in December, and those have been submitted to UNESCO. For the United States, then, the gap has been completed, and you can, again, look at those recommendations, connect in with your work. For all of us, how can we use our work and reorient the process of teaching and learning toward ESD. And then in all of our efforts, what are our mission statements? What are the practices that we have on campus that can be shifted toward, I know we're always saying sustainable development because that's the international language, but if you want to say sustainability education or sustainable future, you know, that can certainly be adapted. These 5 priority action areas. As you're reading through these, I'm going to go through each of these with some pictures and some examples of ways of implementing them. But these are the ones that the global community came together and said, boy, this is specifically what education can do, and the education and specifically higher education sector. So for each of us, think about, you know, what are your missions at your colleges and your universities? What do your strategic plans look like? Have they integrated climate action plans? STARS is a good guiding document for HESI. I recognize that for Second Nature that it's no longer called the President's Climate Commitment. I think it's the Climate Leadership Commitment, but that's the original title, so that's why I wanted to include that. Anyway, that's part of it, and if you are doing that, let's document those missions and strategic plans so that we can let the State Department or our own federal governments know that we're doing this work, and then it can get reported to UNESCO, okay? We are trying our best to create some reporting structures, and HESI is going to be helping us with that. Second, these are on the operational level. And I don't really want to emphasize, I mean, that's very important, but our emphasis for this webinar is on curriculum and faculty development. So I just want to take a moment to honor the work that's happening on the whole institutional end of things. But this is what we're really asking folks to think about. You know, please do come to the HESI conference in October in Baltimore. But also, what are the regional trainings you can offer? And, you know, the Campus Sustainability Hub has some different ideas of how we can develop courses and degrees. But think about also, you know, what kind of funding structures can we set up or partnerships can we set up that's going to build the capacity of our educators. And then the fourth goal of the Global Action Program, empowering and mobilizing youth. Honestly, I wouldn't be a professor if I hadn't discovered service learning. So I just needed to feel like I was making more of a difference. So when I teach sociology, particularly environmental sociology, I require them to get out into the community. And I want them building things and again, helping people. So these examples of these pictures, I mean, those are all service learning projects or courses like the composting pictures. That's a graphic design course. They wanted to do meaningful projects. They still have an assignment, but they want to do assignments focused on sustainability. So we have GIS classes, computer science classes, all of these at Portland Community College, but also other partners within our region, creating living labs or conferences where youth can participate. Lots of networking efforts for sure in the greater Portland region. And finally, the fifth goal, how can we strengthen our local communities? And again, thinking about what does it mean to be educators? It's not just if you have a PhD. You know, it can be all folks within our community, community-based learning, community-based teaching, developing those partnerships. I want to emphasize the picture there in the center, the Eco Challenge. That's going to be happening again this year. That is available online. It's a wonderful 2-week challenge that anyone can participate in. Northwest Earth Institute organizes that, so make a note of that opportunity. All right, moving through some of the final pieces here. Again, what are our stories? And that's what we're going to come up with next with our, you know, even within our Q&A. Maybe there are some things we can think about. How are you going to get your story out? Are you tabling? Are we at conferences? What kinds of awards are we giving out to recognize the good work that folks are doing? And the last piece here is just if you want to be doing work on a regional level, you can connect in with the United Nations University and intentionally think about what are the initiatives or the concerns of the UN, and these initiatives can be aligned again with city and state goals, and then step forward and say, what are your educational needs? Are these being achieved, and how can your institution help meet those? These regional centers, there's 146 around the world now. There are only 4 in the United States, 4 active ones, Greater Portland being the one that I'm responsible for. But there are others in Virginia, Vermont, and Michigan. This is the regional center of expertise, but our local name is the Greater Portland Sustainability Education Network. Again, our mission itself is to create a network, just say it backwards, using a network model, using sustainability education to create a Greater Portland. For each of us, what can you do to educate, empower, and engage your faculty, your staff, your students to create stronger communities? We're all in this together. I hope that we all can figure out how to decrease our footprints and increase our handprints. And I'll end with just a couple ideas here. I hope that this summary has given you some ideas of ways that you can learn more about these issues, get engaged in policies, try if you can to align with these goals, and I think it'll help even just if you take one of the goals per month or something that folks can focus on. If you can integrate them into your curriculum, Agenda 2030 itself offers a lot of rich, robust material that can be relevant to many classes. And of course within our own work and home, always keeping that in mind within our communities. My overall goal, my overall recommendation is for us to think about how we can increase our collective impact. And the research that's coming out from Stanford and other places really requires us to collaborate if we want to scale up fast enough to really address the crucial issues of our time. So I now turn the material back over to the organizers and ask if you have any comments, questions, or ideas.
Thanks, Kim, for that great presentation.
You're welcome.
We're all very proud of your partnership with your center of expertise and the work that you've on the board and your advancing development.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun too. I've really enjoyed meeting people who have the same passion for these issues and good hearts.
While we're waiting for questions to come in through the chat box, I will simply indicate on behalf of the Sustainability Curriculum Consortium that we do have in our near-term plans a deeper dive on the substance of the Sustainable Development Goals that you've mentioned today, the SDGs, the substance of the Paris Agreement on climate change, and the Sendai Agreement on disaster risk, and how those 3 interrelate in setting the framework for sustainability activities in the coming years. So I provide that as a heads up for those who may be listening live or on tape. Speaking of the tape, the recording will be posted. The link to the recording will be posted, and I will share that with everyone who has registered for the dialogue, including the 3 webinars. Kim has shared her slides with us, and her slides will be available along with the background documents that we have already posted for this dialogue series. And I am still looking for questions, but that also gives me the opportunity to say that this is not a one-off discussion on this webinar because it's part of that continuing online dialogue. As I explained in my opening remarks, I know that some of you joined late today. The facilitated online dialogue will begin as of tomorrow. That presents an opportunity for follow-up questions to Kim, follow-up questions to the Sustainability Curriculum Consortium, follow-up questions for our expert presenters in the upcoming webinars, and an opportunity to spark a dialogue on issues related to this theme that each of you may care about, so we can facilitate an interactive dialogue, and I will send that reminder out along with the email links as well. So, can you read that?
Sure. We have a question that's just been received for you, Kim. And the question is, who can identify which non-U.S. higher education partners are interested in developing collaborative global SDG education?
That is an excellent question, and there are lots of great groups. I should have honored and recognized them. In addition, I do have a slide. I think, are we over on the curriculum slide, the SCC slide right now?
You're correct. Well, we're on the SCC website.
Yeah. Okay. On the, if we want to open up go back to my slide for just a minute, slides there for a minute.
Okay, one moment. I'll change over you to the presenter again.
Yeah, I have 2 more slides that I want to pull up here. So, okay, just a second. We'll go over here to the full screen. So within the materials here, I want you to see that within the U.S., and I recognize that I'm not trying, we don't want to be U.S.-centric and all of that. We do have the U.S. Partnership for ESD and HESI, Higher Education Association Sustainability Consortium. DANS, if you're focusing on the disciplinary groups, these are opportunities to connect in with folks who are in cross sectors or within specific disciplines. And then UNESCO itself has strong emphasis on, well, you can see education, science, and cultural work. But within higher education, HESI, that's mainly North America. Granted, we are an international organization, but mainly if you want to work with in the UK, then you connect in with the EAUC. If you're in Australia or South Pacific, then ACTS is your organization to connect with. ProsperNet in Asia. The Global Alliance is an organization that's been linking all of the different higher education organizations together. I'm not going to get all the acronyms right. So GUPES, G-U-P-E-S, a number of these emerged after Rio +20. And the Global Alliance really came together. That's including the International Association of Universities, lots of groups. Those came together in preparation for Paris. So PRIME for business organizations, there's lots to look into. I think if you look at the Global Alliance itself, you'll find that list will have, they've really found every group that you can pull together. I can get that list to the Sustainability Curriculum Consortium, and you can go to that website and we'll have those resources for you.
Thank you very much, Kim, for the additional information. I'm just going to check the chat box again to see if there's any more questions. I do see a comment from Jess that we should include the link to the slide set. Yes, of course. We will be doing that following completion of this webinar over the next few days, I would suppose.
Yeah, it's definitely hoping that you would be able to have that available for folks.
Very good. Well, Not seeing anything else coming in on the chat box at this point, I will again thank you, Kim, for this great presentation and an excellent kickoff to our 6-week dialogue. So again, we will be looking for everybody on the Collaborase platform to continue the discussion. Everyone who's registered for today's webinar automatically was registered for the next 2 webinars and the online dialogue and the co-creation of a synthesis document at the end of this pilot period. So I look forward to your active engagement and full participation over the coming weeks. We'll be back in touch with the follow-up links. And again, thank you everyone for your time today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.